Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. My name is Catherine Tonsberg, and I am here on behalf of the ACLU in Rhode Island in opposition to these three bills in front of you. These three bills are among a number that have been introduced this session to improve school security, which we want to start by saying that this is a very admirable goal, and this is something that's obviously very important to all of us, and we commend the sponsors for trying to address these very important issues. And while we do appreciate their intent, we are concerned about the focus of the measures in front of you tonight, which we believe will result in the over-criminalization of youthful behavior. Increased presence of law enforcement in our school may be intended to protect the student body, but these officers are often relied upon to address routine school discipline. What we see is that the tools that police are trained in are not appropriate for addressing issues with students in schools. They have a different set of tools that our school faculty does, and that's something that we have seen has been a problem in the past. A few years ago, we filed open records requests with school departments throughout the state of Rhode Island asking for information regarding their use of school resource officers. And what we saw was arrests for minor crimes like disorderly conduct. We saw documented cases of escalation of things like dress code infractions resulting in arrests. What we see that the police presence often results in arrests for minor misconduct that could and should have been treated internally as a school discipline problem. A few years ago, as you may remember, there was an incident at Tolman High School where a school resource officer had body slammed a disruptive student. Rather than de-escalating the situation, the officer had used pepper spray and had escalated the situation, which ended up resulting in the injury of 2 students and the arrest of 10 students, or 10 individuals as a result of this situation, which we believe could have been de-escalated. So this incident really underscores the fact that the SROs, as we understand it, generally lack the appropriate or adequate training that's needed to handle these cases in schools. When a student's immature behavior is addressed by law enforcement official trained in criminality and arrests, getting to a root behavioral issue is not something that they're really capable of doing, and the school nor the student is well served by that. In short, increased presence of resource officers in school redefines as criminal justice problems behavioral issues that may be rooted in social, psychological, or academic problems for which involvement in the juvenile justice system is hardly the solution. Further, while we may believe that these resource officers may be helping to keep us safe, recent research paints a much more nuanced picture. A recent study has showed that evidence of school resource officers and other law enforcement officers result in more crimes in some schools. So what we see is that the presence of these resource officers, as we saw in Rhode Island, it does continue to escalate situations, and we see more crime. More serious, non-serious violent offenses are reported to law enforcement than without school resource officers. In addition, while this is obviously impacts all students, it disproportionately affects students of color, students with disabilities, and youth who identify as the LGBT. These groups are much more likely to be arrested for school misconduct than others. Further, as far as the financial aspect of this, it is our understanding that many students, if not all in Rhode Island, would much prefer the very limited resources we have in this state go towards preventative services, more school counselors, social workers, and not an additional police presence. As long as schools prioritize punishment over treatment and services, at-risk kids will be pushed out of school and onto this path of delinquency, and that hurts everybody. I want to point out we had submitted written testimony and attached an article from the New York Times yesterday titled "Why Campus Shootings Are So Shocking. School is the Safest Place for a Child." And as disturbing and horrific as it is to see school shootings, the fact remains that schools truly are a very safe place for children, in fact, the safest place for children. And that's something that we need to take into account when we're talking about how to protect our students and considering school safety. If the committee does wish to support a greater police presence in schools, we would recommend some basic standards being written into the law. including giving schools a meaningful role to play in the selection of these resource officers, providing training that would help them address behavioral issues as well, among other things. And you can see our full written testimony has some more recommendations as well, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Catherine, I have to say, what a great testimony that was. Everybody behind you was out there. Everybody's heads were saying yes. Everybody agrees with you.